Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rainbow Ice session. Rainbow Ice is a Wuyi Mountain Cliff tea. We're in the midst of 6 consecutive cliff teas. Last week we did Green Rope Narcissus. And I told you last week we talked more about relationship of plant and processing and storage to flavor profiles. So let's jump right in. First off, let's do a simple clarification about Taiwanese oolongs, about Anxi, which is Southern Fujian oolongs, and about the Wuyi Cliff Tea oolongs. Taiwanese oolongs are characterized by light roast, light oxidation, they're crisp and fresh, tend to have a little bit of floralness in them. The Anxis are heavier oxidation, low temperature roast. And then the Wuyi Cliff teas are high oxidation, heavy roast. And heavy roast, we'll talk about that because usually when you think of the Wuyi Cliff teas, we're thinking of either 2 roasts or 3 roasts. So that gives you a box to separate those 3 categories of oolong. When we think of flavor, when we think of aroma, sometimes we're a little narrow in how we talk about it. So we think, well, inherently, this varietal has this flavor or aroma. If only that were true. There's quite a few factors which play a role in the Wuyi Mountains Cliff teas. So let's think of this in terms of environment, production, and storage. Those are the 3 main factors. So let's think environment first off. Environment, the Wuyi Mountains. 70 square kilometer area. And then when you're in the mountain, it's 7.7 square kilometer area. So scientists have done tests. And some of these tests go like this. They look at spots within the mountain, that 7.7 square kilometer area, and they evaluate tea that on average has 6 or more hours of sunlight. And then within a mile of that spot, so that is the physical terroir is about the same. Those that are shaded, 2 hours or less. Is there a difference in the chemical constituents that are produced in the tea? There absolutely is. And what they have found is if you have longer sunlight, that affects the amino acids. Doesn't have anything to do with the flavonoid biosynthesis. In other words, the things that are creating the tools for plants to operate seems not to be affected by longer or shorter sunlight. But flavor-wise, if you're producing more amino acids, you're going to be producing some more compounds that cause sweetness, hints of sweetness. So that's an important thing that scientists are now categorizing. Farmers inherently, intuitively, lineage-wise have understood. Yeah, the leaves that I get that are sunlit for a long time, on average, yeah, those have a different flavor than the leaves that only get 2 hours less. So this is now coming to be proven as a fact. What about when you pick? If you pick on a cloudy day, shouldn't it be the same as picking on a sunny day? I mean, wow, there's not that much difference, is there? Turns out that there is. That again, if you pick on a sunny day, the umami flavor ends up being stronger. They're still working out what it is chemically that is causing this. So, and farmers have told us these things all these years. They haven't said it like that. They said, we don't like picking on cloudy days because, it's just harder to handle, or it doesn't come out with the quite right flavor. We want sunny days. So they weren't able to give us, when we first started, any reasons that were logically based. And it's not a matter of logic, scientifically based reasons. What about in terms of the process? Let's think about the process for a minute. So let's go through the steps again. There are about 9 basic steps with Cliff tea. However, if you include the micro steps, there's 26 to 36. But this just talk about the 9 big steps. So you got to pick the tea. Everybody has to do that. You have to wither the tea. So withering the tea means removing the moisture, making the leaf pliable, right? Then after you do that, you got to shake. You wither some more. You got to shake. Okay. And when you shake, what do you do? Last week or the week before, we had a leaf with a red edge. It had been shaken. The moisture was successfully coming out. By the way, one of the things I failed to mention on that day, and I should have, is the fact that it had an evenness in the redness. That enhances the loss of moisture within a tea leaf. And that's the other reason. They're not just doing it for an aesthetic reason. They want that moisture to come out at a certain rate. And they found that by causing the edges of the leaves to be bruised, that brings it out at the rate that they want. So it seems like, and it's pretty straightforward, you wither, you shake, and then you fix. What does fix mean? Nothing's broken. You've been oxidizing it. You've been reducing the moisture. You need to stop the oxidation process. And that's a chemical process, and you stop it with heat. 150 or higher brings it to a stop. It turns out with the Cliff teas, they use somewhere 300 to 400 degrees. So they want quick stops. They don't want these rolling stops. They want quick stops. So after it's heated, what's the next step? You got to roll this thing. So are the farmers really in a hurry to roll? They go through this process, pick, wither, and shake, and then apply heat. They want to roll quickly. Why? When they roll the leaves, what happens is all the sap comes to, not all the sap, but the majority of leaf sap comes to the surface. Let's think of baking for a minute. When you're baking a cake, at the end of the day, you put frosting on, right? The frosting is the thing that all the kids look at. Oh, I got to have that nice color. Kids can smell the sweetness of that frost. The frosting of the leaves is somehow an equivalent, isn't it? Because that's where all the aromatics get on the surface of the leaves. And what do they do after they do that rolling? They bake it. So they are solidifying, they're stabilizing. This is the initial bake. They're stabilizing what the aroma is going to be. They're stabilizing what the flavor is going to be. Now, in a minute, we'll know that I use this term slightly incorrectly. But for our purposes, we're using this term to give you a clear picture of what's going on. So after they roll it and bake it, then what do? Roast. Do they roast all in one day? No, they roast over a 2 to 3 month period. So they're roasting either 2 times or 3 times. So let's work backwards a little bit. What's the difference between rolling 2 times and 3 times? 2 times, You have some hints of chocolate and caramel and nuttiness, but you get much more if you do it a third time. You still have more astringency left if you only do it twice. So farmers, again, for whatever reason, and let's stop saying for whatever reason, let's say for lineage reasons, because these farmers have all been doing this for a lot of years through the lineages. So they've known, if I roast a little more, I might get such and such a flavor. Scientists are catching up right now, right? Farmers never describe to us, well, if we roast, 3 times, difference between the third and the second is exactly this, and the other. And that's because, certain glycosylation is occurring, flavonoid glycosylation. No. They didn't use any of those terms. Scientists are giving us the reasons for why the farmers have been successful for all these centuries with these cliff teas. So when we are thinking about understanding the cliff teas, and as we start to understand how do you get to these flavor profiles, this helps you when you're making judgments about cliff teas. If it's pretty thin, then there's probably an issue with the processing. If it's got denser and smoother, hey, they probably did this as a third roast and they did a pretty good job. Because what are the last 2 steps, which I haven't mentioned yet? Sorting and packaging. What happens at the sorting step? I've never talked much about this before, so I think everybody assumes, oh yeah, you take each one and you make them the same length so that they're all beautiful in the package. That's only a small part of the story. What's the real story? The real story is, what are they picking out? They're picking out things. The first thing they're picking out is scorched leaves. Ooh, scorched leaves doesn't sound good. That sounds like the farmer made a mistake. No, not necessarily. Particularly if they're going through a third roast, they may in principle and in practice go right to the edge because they know this particular varietal needs a heavier roast to get the full flavor. Right to the edge, that means there's going to be some mistakes. How do the mistakes occur? The mistakes occur because the leaf is broken, so it gets scorched. So that's why workers, leaf by leaf, go through and pick out scorched leaves. What else are they trying to pick out? Unlike raw black or the ancient tree. Remember, the ancient tree, Black Beauty is a wonderful example. All of you have had Black Beauty. You see the leaves. What else do you see? You see stems. Oh my gosh, there's stems in the tea, this red tea. Do you ever see stems in high quality Wuyi Mountain Cliff teas? And the answer is you do not. If you see those, somebody has made a mistake. What about undesirable things? What's an undesirable? A rock, a little pebble, obviously not a big rock. Any charred bug, if any bug happened to be caught in the process, those are undesirables. And that's why they pick through leaf by leaf. You're wondering at this level why it's so expensive, because they're going ahead and doing everything individually. Yes.
From one of our friends, okay, I'm throwing my hat in the ring. From the look of the dry leaves, I'm betting this has at most a light to medium roast.
Oh, this is really interesting. So one of you has gone ahead and jumped the gun, which is fine because you all are qualified to do that, and said, okay, I'm looking at these things. And they said light to medium, right?
Yes, light to medium.
Light to medium. Okay. Almost right. Here's the only thing that I would say maybe we would want to alter a little bit. Say 2 or 3. Then we'll all be on the same page. This isn't light roasted. This is a 2 roast. In other words, it's been roasted twice. It hasn't been roasted 3 times. By the way, and the fact that you use your eyes to start the process means you're going to know something, especially as we talk today, about why this should have more hints of floral. Because when it's a 2 roast, the terpenes, see, I must know something because I used a big word. So those are the compounds that include the alcohols, the linalool, the neurylidol. These things have the floral / fruity flavor. There tend to be more of those in a 2 roast than a 3 roast. 3 roast, those things go away. All right, let's see how I'm doing here. Oh, not exceeding yet. Okay, whoops. So let's back up a minute because so many times, let's go back to environment. We went through the sorting step. Let's go back to environment for a minute because I want to talk about one more thing that I didn't talk about in the beginning, which actually makes a huge difference. And it is the physical environment. And that's why that 7.7 square kilometer area is so emblematic and thought of as the best area for the Wuyi Cliff teas. What's the land look like? The tea bushes / trees look like they're growing essentially out of rocks. It's loose rock material. It's usually red because the iron is oxidized. And that brings what you think of as the minerality. That's that typicalness of minerality. It's in that soil. What if it's growing in gravelly soil? Will it be equally minerally? And the answer is no. So looking at the soil, if you were walking with me, and this is why Beecher and I, we walk the fields because we get a sense for this. We don't always understand precisely on a scientific basis exactly what's happening because that's still being sussed out by scientists, but we can look, wow, we get tea from this area. Yeah, it's growing on thin layers of broken rock soil. That's the best. When it's in the gravelly soil, that's not as good. If it's in the alluvial soil, that's terrible. Well, I shouldn't use that word. You know what? Let me back up. I didn't use that word. That's more market-like. So we've got the stuff from within the mountains, so location matters. So I ask you this, based upon where we're going with science today, does varietal matter? Okay, the answer is yes, but what are the caveats? Let's use a Chinese adage, and this will explain the caveat right away. Every rock grows tea. Every tea has its own name. This is an important adage, Chinese adage. And the reason it's important, it explains 1,000 things. Here's the main thing it explains. Back in the 1930s, the Chinese went through, surveyed the Wuyi Mountains and said, oh my gosh, there's well over 1,000 different varietals in the Wuyi Mountains. Now, all of a sudden, these years, survey the mountains, well, looks like up to 300 different varietals. What happened? World War II occurred. Did something catastrophic happen in the Wuyi Mountains and all of a sudden all these other varietals went away? No, it has to do with this adage, and this adage tells you something very important about the terroir and its effect on flavor and its effect on understanding what to do with the tea. Truly, when teas grow out of this rocky soil, they are definitely influenced by what's in that particular local area of rocky soil. And so that's why 100 yards away, same varietal, tastes very different. What else is influencing the terroir? Oh, yeah. Let's think about the look and feel of these areas. Within the mountain, remember I told you the Wuyi Mountains? Oh my gosh, forested, bamboo, pine, cypresses, beautiful, lovely dense forest. I ask you this, is that 7.7 square kilometer area densely forested? The answer is no. It's in a gorge, and there are microclimates there, but there aren't a lot of tall trees there. Instead, there are bushes and flowers. What sort of flowers? Azaleas. Oh, cymbidium. What kind of cymbidium? Cymbidium, that's orchid, by the way. Fancy word for orchid, so that I'm paying attention. Cymbidium that have floral essences. So when you walk through that area, you get these light floral influences just as you're walking. Does that influence the tea? Scientists are now beginning to feel more and more it does influence the tea. So terroir at a very physical level makes a difference. That's the soil. At a sunlight level, they're proving it makes a very distinct difference. What about at a temperature and altitude level? Answer to that is it makes, particularly humidity seems to make a difference. So more and more of this research is being rolled out. And that's why there's such confusion in the market. How can there have been 1,000 varietals and now there's 300 varietals? Well, nothing changed. What changed is our understanding of what is influencing the final outcome. And that's really interesting as they go back and look at history and go back and look at some of the notes that people have taken. So we're getting a better understanding of why the difference in description is occurring. I said storage is the final frontier, so to speak, with the Wuyi Cliff teas. Why storage? If you don't understand storage principles, you are not going to understand end result flavor principles. So what do I mean by that? I saw a study. It took storage from the year, let me get this right. There's a 14-year difference, 1995, that's right, to 2009. They evaluated the metabolites within the tea. That's the fancy word for the chemical constituents within the tea. And what they found over and over again, regardless of the exact location where the tea was grown, it was all grown within the 7.7 mile interior, but not thinking very specifically, what was it, 5 hours of sunlight or 4? No. They weren't thinking that. They were thinking, what's the flavor and what's the constituents in 1995 and what's the constituents in 2009? And they found that tea oxidizes, it's an age oxidation, and so the polyphenols are changing. The catechins are changing into theaflavins and theorubicins. And as that happens, what's the change in flavor profile? the flavor profile becomes smoother and mellower, sometimes a little woodsy. So when we have tea, and by the way, people in the business of selling tea have always known that storage makes a difference because they get these cliff teas cold in October. You know, they're finished. You come in, do they put them on the market? Answer is almost never, because the roast is so ferocious, the minerality is so forward in some of these varietals, most people would be barely able to tolerate. We actually love tea this way because over the years, Bijou and I have learned how to taste into the tea, so to speak, and kind of look for, okay, we're going to store this for X amount of time. What do we expect to see after 8 months? And we've actually done this before. We've taken notes. Okay, in 8 months, we should have more of this chocolate. We should have more of this caramel. Probably no floral, or a little fruity. And science is coming along behind us to verify, in essence, what we're doing. And at the time, we didn't know. We looked around at the experts who were with us, and this was what they were doing. You know, they're smelling, they're tasting. Oh, this one's going to be good. Well, why is it going to be good? It's so, potent. Oh, it's going to be good because you taste underneath. What do you mean taste underneath? You mean pour it out and get to the bottom? Is that what? No, no, no. They're not thinking. Right. Wasn't thinking. Taste all the flavors. First, test it, stress it, and then go through a taste by side, and you'll start to see differences. And in the beginning, I didn't believe this because I just didn't understand it and was inexperienced. And then year after years, we started to do this. You know what? By luck, I started to become pretty good at this. Bijou, by skill, became great at this. This is how this works, and this is the reason it works this way. All right. The reason that you're feeling restless now is because you're thirsty. And I get this. I can feel the restlessness coming through the video. I wonder if the tea master is restless. Oh, she's restless too because she's right here beside me. Not good to have the tea master restless. So, without further ado, let me bring forward the numinous, beautiful, long-haired tea master.
嗨，早上好。Yeah, we do 延长，it's a 延长 from Wuyi Mountain. Yeah, so also, so just right another people are saying favorite. Yeah, this is the.
So that's the prepared rainbow ice. We poured it out into a little bamboo thing that we can use to handle it without handling it with our hands. And she's got a tool for that. The tableau is what you'd expect. Tea tray, Ishin pot, 16-ounce glass, a tea toy. You don't have to have this. They're fun though. And she uses this, and you'll see how she uses this in a minute. But the most important thing you have to have is a pot of some sort, whether it's ceramic or I Ching, and a glass. And she drew 200-degree water. She's pouring it over the pot. Oh, and she's pouring it in the pot too. Must mean that this pot should be hot, inside and outside. And why is that? Remember the frosting that we talked about just now? That is where the tea sap was on the outside of the leaves. You need this heat to activate that, the tea innards or the tea sap. Recipient cup is getting the 200-degree water. All right, and she's getting it ready, and I'm putting the time on. Yeah, now power. Okay. So it's 2 minutes, 20 seconds. For an Yixing pot. Destroying 200-degree water. Pouring it over and in. Covering it up, starting the timer. Okay, so all of these things make a difference. The processing makes a difference, where it grows makes a difference, how you store it. Temperature wise, how you store it is extra important. Why is it extra important? If you store, say, at 74, 75 degrees, I guarantee you, without fail, at the end of the year, you will have bland tea and you'll be embarrassed to serve to anybody. Temperature causes degradation of the polyphenols. Degradation of the polyphenols is okay if it occurs slowly. If it occurs fast, it just wrecks the flavor. So you got to be below 70. You have to be below 70. 68, 66, those are real good temperatures to store. Under those conditions, you can store for 10 to 20 years. And you think to yourself, you may be thinking to yourself, well, geez, what's the difference between 74 and 68? Well, it's an 8% difference. So if you do 8% over, period of time, in 9 years already, you've had a huge amount more of degradation than you expected. Huge amount. It's double what you expected. And so therefore, the numbers seem small. The numbers seem tiny. Believe me, we've tested. We know. Don't violate these numbers because this tea should easily last 10 to 20 years. It will change, but it'll change in a nice way. And that's what we like. And that's what the beauty of these Wuyi Cliff teas are, their ability to change. And remembering, as you start to think about this, does this affect all teas the same way? The answer is not exactly, but generally speaking, the answer is yes. All right, timer's gone off. Tea Master is right here in rhythm. I love Tea Master rhythm. I wish I could achieve Tea Master. I think I'd live a lot longer if I achieved Tea Master rhythm. Very present. And as a point of clarification, we all have rhythm. And we all have the ability to have that rhythm. We've just got to recognize what it is and then execute. All right. Wow. I can already smell this thing. That's the first thing I'll tell you. Second thing I'll tell you is, isn't that beautiful? There's an aesthetic to this. The Cliff teas just have, by tea, this extreme beauty. And it's not your turn to brew yet, but when you do, think about, and if you took good notes last week, think about what that aroma was. This one is different. And before I enter the quality arena, I'm going to tell you one other surprising thing. This varietal is related to last week's varietal. It's not the same, but it's related. All right. I'm gonna enter quality arena at 200-degree inhalation. Purple. Okay, I'm tasting the astringency. I know where it is on my tongue. I'm trying to determine this aftertaste. I don't have energetics yet. I'm going to take a second sip. Second sip, I'm going to verify what I did with the first sip. In addition, I'm going to think about taste and aroma. Okay, I verified the stringency. I'm getting an aftertaste. I'm still working on the energetics. Your turn to brew. Yours is in package number 2, labeled Rainbow Ice. Remember the time, if you're using leashing, is 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And remember, it seems like the tea master is having fun when she pours water on the outside. There is purpose to every move that she does. Heating the pot is very important, and heating it uniformly. Wulong is the only style of tea that really, really appreciates this type of concentrated heat, and especially the cliff tea. Drying the 200-degree water, you should be doing the same. Pouring the water in, yeah.
We have someone that says the dry leaves smell sweet and fresh.
Great. So we're starting off right away. Sweet and fresh dry leaves. Somehow the amino acids have been influenced. And whether it's because it was picked in, or it was more in the sunlight, or it was picked on a certain sunlight day, there's more of that influence, therefore there's more sweetness. I don't know in this case, because remember, as I'm understanding the science, unless I'm actually there, I don't exactly know, although I know roughly approximately what it should be. This varietal, though, unlike or is related to last week's Sui Shin. This is a varietal which is closely related, and yet the flavor is distinctly different. So why is that flavor different? We just went through the reasons. The farmer understands this varietal and says, I want to produce a flavor like this. I want the leaves to smell a certain way. And because I'm used to dealing with this varietal in this place where it grows, I have this expectation. And by the way, why does the tea taste so different from year to year? Well, if you make a change in processing, you now know why. If the weather pattern is significantly different, you now know why. If the age of the bush is different, in other words, you cut down some old bushes and now you're using new bushes, it's in the same place. Why should it be different? Oh, no, it is different. Every single step relates to the eventual flavor profile. And that's why when we go back every year, we have to look and taste all these different fields. We love all the farmers. All the farmers are great. and we love them. Nonetheless, their conditions change, don't they? And that's not just the geographical or physical conditions. It's also what they may be doing for processing. You're in a rhythm as you're pouring it out. All right. So you're entering the quality arena. So it sounds like what I just said was a contradiction. And let me explain why it wasn't. Because can't a farmer, we're in the iPhone YouTube era. Can't a farmer take exact pictures of what they do and replicate exactly what they did in the previous year? The only problem with that is when it comes to you, is it the same? In other words, all right, last year the average was 5.896 hours of sunlight. This year the average is 4.38 hours of sunlight. Do you have the same product? The answer is no. You have the same varietal, yes. You have the same soil, but things happen differently. Oh, it rained a lot during the fall, but got hot earlier. Is that a significant difference? Absolutely. This is why year by year, even though we absolutely trust the farmers, this is why we have to go taste. And this is why when it comes back so different than a previous year, we may not get it the next year because it's like, okay, this is out of bounds, or we already have this flavor, or gosh, we have all these other competing flavors. We like these ones first. So by the way, it's your turn to be tasting and entering and letting me know what you're appreciating. And while you're thinking about it, the Chinese do publish, and they started in 2002, publish standards for these teas. And they produced one in 2002, they produced one in 2006 for these same teas. And just this year, they're going through and updating the standards. I can't wait to see what the updated standards are. I tried to look last night. They're not complete yet. And those give kind of some outlines of how you're supposed to handle the tea in the Wuyi Mountains. Does that constrain the farmer? No, it's not meant to constrain the farmer. It's meant to help them reach maximum flavor profiles, whatever it is that particular year. And this is a result, year by year, you have scientists going out there studying these metabolites in the tea, studying how they interact with humans. Remember, they've got these massive data files of metabolites and how they interact with the tongue and so forth. So there's lots and lots of information, but there's so many metabolites within the tea. It's going to take another 10 years before they have everything discovered. Yes.
The comment, and then we have some observations. Sounds like making tea is like a love affair. Every time the pair gets together, there are too many internal and external variables at the moment of meeting to ever repeat old magic, but new magic arises and surprises.
I love this comment. This individual compared making this tea year by year to being a love affair because the analogy is the farmer knows that these tea leaves are going to produce something great. They don't know exactly what that end result is. And there's that match and the tension between seeing how the leaves came this year and getting the best out of them. I love this analogy. Nice analogy.
The next person says the astringency of green-robed narcissus seems to land on the front of my tongue. This lands on the middle of my tongue.
How interesting. I concur. And genomically, by accident, both of us are absolutely together. I immediately detected a stronger astringency last week than I do this week, and it landed in a different place. Great observation.
Next, distinctive, the honey floral aroma of the dry leaves not represented in the first swallow. I'm not finding astringency, but first sip notes of minerality and curious murkiness, mystery. Waiting then, notes of wheat, hints of Cabernet, and a scent of honey floral, easy swallow, warm to the core, satisfying.
I love this. Let's start at the end, satisfying. Warm to the core. These are the energetics of this tea. And by the way, I've got those same energetics. That very satisfying, almost a density to this tea, which is very different than last week's tea. Honey floralness at the end. The commentator notes that the honey floralness of the aroma didn't match the initial sips. But this is to be expected because as the temperature cools and as more of your taste buds get involved, you detect different things. So this is part of the magic overall of the Cliff teas because there isn't a good script that anybody can write which will tell you exactly what you're going to taste. And the reason being, we have different rhythms. Different speeds of drinking create different feelings about the tea. Yes.
One more comment. The scent of the tea water is caramel with some hints of spice. Taste starts with wet astringency on the tongue, but ends with a dry aftertaste. The flavor is sweet with a ghost like a hint of roast. Sue says the taste is like a blend of tobacco and root beer.
Interesting. All right. This is a complicated comment. Let's start at the end again because I kind of the end is the most intriguing to me. So a mix of tobacco and sweetness, is that what that was?
Tobacco and root beer.
And root beer. Okay. And so root beer is complicated, isn't it? Because it's not, if you're really thinking about the root beer taste without the sweetness, that is a specific taste. And I like actually that you've captured that because I am on board with that. The tobacco, that I'm not registering that the same way, but the root beer I'm registering in and again, if we're excluding the sweetness, I'm registering in a strong way. I love this comment. And by the way, I didn't say that tobacco was wrong at all. All of us appreciate these differently and at different paces. And so I'm actually just thinking about that as I'm now starting to retaste that with that in mind. What was a little bit before that also? There were some other interesting things.
Yeah, the beginning is the scent of the tea water is caramel with some hints of spice.
Yep.
The taste starts with a wet astringency on the tongue, but ends with a dry aftertaste.
Wet astringency on the tongue with a dry aftertaste. This is an outstanding description. And it's an outstanding description because compared to last week, and again, if you took good notes last week, I don't think any of you would have said wet astringency, but this is very different than last week. This does have a juiciness to it. What you're calling wet astringency, I'm calling juicy, but we're saying the same thing. And I love that you've detected that. Hints of caramel and spice also. And that travels all the way into that root beer comment. This is a thoughtful comment. Nice job.
There was one more
Yeah.
line that we didn't talk about. The flavor is sweet with a ghost-like hint of roast.
Sweet with a ghost-like hint of roast. Let's go back to the individual who said, this is a light to medium. And I said it's a number 2. It's a number 2, roasted twice. And you have that ghostly roast. That's because it's a twice roast. And you have a sweetness. If they had roasted it a third time, what would the difference have been? Well, one thing is that sweetness wouldn't have been as apparent. A couple of you mentioned honey floralness. That wouldn't have been as apparent. And I don't think that you would have gotten that caramel spice. So great catch on these. Yeah.
I'd say this tea tastes a bit smoother than last. And then there's one more comment. I find this drying, and drying with teas, I have to slow down because the tapestry of it all is not immediately apparent. I find this very dynamic. Just when I sense the minerality, I find the roast intertwined. The honey sweetness has a subtlety of honeysuckle again, where I really have to slow down to meet it.
This is a great comment. In order to understand these teas, we have to be in rhythm. This commentator has talked about that because have to slow down to get it. Also has talked about just the change that's occurring as they're going through and tasting the tea. Called it something different, called it dynamic. But really, the sense behind dynamic is nothing is the same. You have to be present all the way through. This is a great comment. Before dynamic, what was it? Honey, floral.
I
Or
find
something.
drying with the drying teas.
Yep.
I have to slow down because the tapestry of it all is not immediately apparent.
There we go. Tapestry of it all is not immediately apparent. Cliff teas, especially the best of them, the championship teas, this little phrase could be used for all championship teas. The tapestry is not, except Dreamscape. Dreamscape, it's a full tapestry right away. Oh, it's really, where do I play in that tapestry? But for most of the championship teas, that tapestry is there. It's just not easily accessible. You have to have presence, and you have to be able to do it slowly enough to let it all blossom. Great comment. All right.
But one more. I get lovely notes of honey and tropical fruits on the nose, maybe papaya. The taste definitely has a roast coming through, but not heavy minerality. I still get fruits, but like the rich, rounded flavors of the grilled peaches.
Love this comment. So there's the fruity. And by the way, a reminder, some of you will say floral, some of you will say fruity. We're all talking about the same. So this commentator talked about toasted peaches, talked about hints of papaya. Love the fact that you're reaching under and getting a full profile of this tea. The taster also talked about the roast is apparent, but there is minerality, but it's not, nothing is out of balance. That's the implication of everything that was said in this last comment. A balance leading with fruitiness, really pleasant. Yeah.
Rainbow Ice, what is the inspiration for the name?
Great question. And you all have the answer because you've just gone through the answer. What about that balance? It's like a rainbow, all the colors coming through. And it just struck me with that balance the first time I had it. And I knew that this was the exact right name to give it. And there's two aspects to that, right? Because there's an ice at the end of that. Well, rainbow, some rainbows that you see in the sky have unevenness in the spectrum, right? But if you have an ice seed, that's got rainbow colors in it, it's very even typically. And so I was trying to capture both. And again, talking about balance, which is what you all are reflecting in this. And a balance that is not immediately apparent unless you're in rhythm.
One more comment. Oh, two. The roast is afoot. Shakespeare tea comment.
The what?
The roast is afoot.
Ah.
A Shakespeare tea comment.
I love that. Yes, absolutely true.
I assumed it's the summer dessert. Shaved ice with whatever syrup you wanted poured over top.
That's great. Yeah, you're right. And you're really right because you called it a dessert. Because in some way, when we first tasted it, both Bijou and I thought, gosh, at the end of a sumptuous meal, what a sumptuous tea. And it's like that dessert at the end of a meal. So yeah, I know when people first start seeing that on the board, it's like, oh my gosh, he's lost his mind. But when you go through and taste like this, then you clearly have got it.
The energetics are both grounding and mind clearing.
I love this comment. Energetics, grounding, and mind steering. I very rarely would use mind steering.
Mind clearing.
Oh, mind clearing. I'm sorry. Mind clearing. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, because it kind of grounding and mind clearing. I like this. Good comment. Terrific. I think, yes, we've reached the end of our time today. I was really happy to go with this one in this order because Green Robe Narcissus, everybody enjoyed Green Robe Narcissus for the things you enjoyed it for. But it is so different from this, even though it's a varietal of Narcissus. One more comment because I realize I meant to tell you one more thing. In that standard for the Wuyi Mountains Cliff teas, they describe 5 styles of cliff tea. So Scarlet Robe, famous cultivars, something called Rogueway, something called Shuixian, and something called Qizhu. Those are the 5 varietals. The only problem with that description, famous cultivars, is a huge number. And this shows that they're still trying to get their hands around or arms around that, whatever that number is. All right. We've come to the end of our session today. You guys, as usual, are great. I applaud the commentary today. Next week, what are we doing next week? We're doing another cliff tea next week. I think we're doing apotheosis next week. Is that what we're doing next week? Yeah, I think so. It's going to be great. It's going to be different than what you had this week. Your responsibilities this upcoming week, be healthy. Look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye now.